Cass pressed her hand against the cold window of the transport ship. Outside, the Vela colony vessel drifted in the darkness of space, its lights flickering like dying stars. 17,000 souls lived inside that metal shell, and food supplies would last only 3 more weeks. Another rejection, Captain Thorne announced from the bridge. His voice carried the weight of too many failures. The station at Kelver Prime won't grant us docking permission. Cass closed her eyes. That made 7 stations in 3 months. 7 times the Vela refugees had begged for help. 7 times they were turned away. The plague that changed their DNA had also made them unwanted across the galaxy. She remembered when the plague first struck their home world. It killed millions in the first year. Those who survived found themselves different. They could sense emotions now, feel the fear and anger and joy of others like waves washing over their minds. The Concordants called it a genetic corruption. They said the Vela were no longer pure, no longer safe. Within a year, the Concordants expelled them from all member worlds. "How much longer can we survive out here?" asked Mira, a young Vela child standing beside Cass. Her mother had died 2 months ago from a curable disease. But no Concordance hospital would treat them. "We'll find a place," Cass said. Though she didn't believe her own words anymore, the Vela were not alone in their suffering. Throughout the galaxy, other species faced the same fate. The Synthburn, beings who were part organic and part artificial intelligence, were hunted as abominations. The Concordants believed mixing flesh and machine was against natural law. Thousands of Synthburn fled into deep space, their ships barely functioning. Their people dying from lack of specialized medical care. Then there were the Fractured, a species that once lived as a perfect hive mind. They shared one consciousness across millions of bodies. But their queen died in an accident, and the hive mind shattered. Now they existed as broken pieces, individuals who didn't know how to be alone. The Concordants offered no help. They said the Fractured were too damaged, too unpredictable. The Wandering suffered differently. They were a nomadic people who traveled between stars, never settling on one world. The Concordants demanded they choose a planet and stay there, follow the rules, become like everyone else. When the Wandering refused, the Concordants declared them criminals. Their ships were attacked, their children taken, their way of life destroyed. All across the galaxy, the rejected ones died in silence. The Concordants didn't kill them directly. They just closed every door, blocked every port, denied every request for help. It was a slow death, clean and efficient, and the Concordants could say their hands were free of blood. Cass returned to her small quarters on the ship. She was a scientist before the plague, studying star patterns and gravity waves. Now, she spent her days rationing food and calculating how long they could survive. The answer was always the same: not long enough. She sat at her desk and activated her computer. Maybe there was some unexplored system, some forgotten station, someplace the Concordants didn't control. She searched through old star charts. Looking for anything? That's when she heard a dot at first. Cass thought the signal was just noise, random static from a dying star. But as she filtered the frequencies, she realized it was intentional. Someone was broadcasting a message, repeating it over and over. She turned up the volume. The voice spoke in Velo language, then switched to Synthburn binary code, then to the musical tones of the Fractured, then to languages she had never heard before. Hundreds of languages, all carrying the same message. All welcome. Sanctuary granted. Follow the beacon home. Cass's hands shook as she traced the signal's origin. It came from a system near the outer edge of explored space, the third planet of a yellow star. She pulled up the database. The star was called Sol. The planet was called Earth, home to a species called humans. She knew little about humans. They joined the galactic community only 50 years ago. Most species considered them primitive. They had no genetic enhancements, no hive minds, no energy forms. They were just flesh and bone, emotional and chaotic. The Concordance rejected Earth's application for full membership twice, calling them too violent, too unstable, too different. But they were broadcasting a message of welcome. Cass ran to the bridge. "Captain, I found something." Captain Thorne looked at her with tired eyes. He had aged 10 years in the past 3 months. "Another closed door?" "No," Cass said, her voice rising with something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Hope. An open one." She played the message for the crew. They listened in silence as the words repeated in their language. "All are welcome. Sanctuary granted. Follow the beacon home." "It could be a trap," said the captain's second officer. "The Concordance might be using this to gather us all in one place." "Or it could be real," Cass said. She felt the emotions of everyone on the bridge. Doubt, fear, but also hope, desperate and fragile. "We're dying out here anyway. At least this gives us a chance." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Send word to the other Velar ships. Tell them what we found. Each captain can decide for themselves." Within hours, the decision was made. All 12 Velar colony ships would follow the beacon. They had nothing left to lose. As they prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Cass stood at her window again. She thought about the message, about the humans who sent it. Why would they help the rejected ones? What could they possibly gain? Maybe they knew what it felt like to be unwanted. Maybe they understood that the Concordance's definition of worthy was too narrow, too cruel. Or maybe humans were just different enough to see value where others saw only corruption. The ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Concordance territories behind. Cass didn't know what they would find at Earth. She didn't know if the sanctuary was real, or if they were flying toward another rejection, another closed door. But as she felt the emotions of the 17,000 Velar around her, she knew one thing for certain. They were still alive. They were still trying. And sometimes that was enough. The journey to Sol System would take 8 days. 8 days to hope. 8 days to dream of a place where being different wasn't a crime. 8 days until they learned if humanity's welcome was genuine. Cass held Myra's hand and whispered, "We're going home." The child looked up at her. "But we don't have a home." "Maybe we will soon," Cass said, believing it just a little bit more than before. The Velar fleet dropped out of hyperspace near a yellow star. Cass rushed to the observation deck along with hundreds of others. They all wanted to see the planet that promised the sanctuary. Earth hung in the darkness like a jewel. Blue oceans covered most of its surface, with green and brown continents scattered between them. White clouds swirled in patterns that reminded Cass of paintings. She had seen many planets in her life, but none quite like this one. "It's beautiful," whispered Mira. Pressing her face against the window, Captain Thorne opened communications with Earth. "This is the Velar refugee fleet. We received your beacon. We request permission to approach." His voice was careful, prepared for rejection. The response came within seconds. A human female appeared on the screen. She had dark skin and warm eyes that crinkled when she smiled. "Velar Fleet, this is Commander Sarah Chun of Earth Defense. Your request is granted. We have orbital facilities prepared for your arrival. Medical teams are standing by. Welcome home." The bridge fell silent. Several crew members started crying. Cass felt their emotions crash over her like a wave. Relief, disbelief, joy, fear that it might still be a trick. "You're allowing all of us to land?" Captain Thorne asked, his voice breaking. "All 17,000? "Yes," Commander Chun said simply. "All of you. We've been tracking your journey. We knew you were coming. Docking coordinates are being transmitted now. As the Velar ships moved toward Earth, more refugee vessels began arriving. A massive synthburn transport appeared, its hull a strange blend of living metal and organic material. The fractured came in hundreds of small ships, each carrying a fragment of what was once a unified people. The wandering arrived in their ancient vessels, marked with symbols from 1,000 different worlds. Kes watched as Earth welcomed them all. No questions about their genetics. No demands to prove their worth. Just open docking bays and waiting hands. The Velar ships docked at a massive orbital station that humans had built in the past year. It was designed to house refugees, with sections adapted for different species needs. The Velar needed higher humidity. The synthburn required charging stations for their mechanical parts. The fractured needed spaces where they could try to reconnect their broken hive mind. Humans had prepared for all of it. When Kes stepped off the ship, a human man in a medical uniform approached her. "Hello, I'm Dr. James Park. I understand you can sense emotions. That must be overwhelming in a place like this." He spoke in perfect Velo language. Kes stared at him. "You learned our language?" "We've been learning all the refugee languages for months," Dr. Park said. "We wanted you to feel understood when you arrived. Now, let's get you and your people through medical screening. Just basic health checks, nothing invasive." The medical facility was unlike anything Kes had experienced in the Concordance. Human doctors worked alongside Velar nurses and synthburn technicians. They treated injuries and diseases that Concordance hospitals had refused to touch. They asked questions with genuine concern, not suspicion. Myra received treatment for a lung infection that had been slowly killing her. The human doctor, a woman with red hair and gentle hands, gave the child medicine and a stuffed animal shaped like an earth creature called a bear. "Why are you helping us?" Kes asked Commander Chun when they met in person later that day. "What do you want from us?" Sarah Chun led her to a window overlooking Earth. "See that planet? 300 years ago, it was divided into nearly 200 different nations. We fought wars over differences in skin color, religion, language, resources. We killed each other by the millions. We created weapons that could destroy our entire world. What changed?" Kes asked. "We almost died," Chun said quietly. "Climate change, nuclear weapons, pandemics. We came so close to extinction that we finally realized something. Our differences weren't weaknesses. They were our greatest strength. Every culture, every perspective, every way of thinking added something valuable. When we stopped fighting our differences and started celebrating them, we became stronger." She turned to face Kes. "When we joined the galactic community, we were so excited. We thought we'd find others who understood that. Instead, we found the Concordance. They told us we were too diverse, too chaotic, too emotional. They wanted us to choose one government, one language, one way of thinking. They rejected us twice." "So you know what it feels like," Kes said. "Yes, and we decided that if the Concordance wouldn't accept us, we'd create our own community, one that accepted everyone. We started broadcasting the beacon 3 years ago. You're not the first refugees to come here, and you won't be the last." Over the next few weeks, Kes explored the refugee center and the planet below. Humans had created neighborhoods for each species, but also shared spaces where everyone mixed together. She saw synthburn children playing with human children, their differences not mattering at all. She watched fractured individuals sitting in circles, trying to rebuild their connections, while human therapists helped them accept their individuality. Wandering were perhaps the happiest. Humans didn't demand they settle in one place. Instead, they gave them ships and maps of unexplored systems, asking only that they return sometimes to share what they learned. Kes was assigned to work with a human engineer named Marcus Okonkwo. He was tall, with dark skin and a laugh that filled every room. They were tasked with studying how to integrate different technologies. "Your emotion-sensing ability," Marcus said one day while they worked. "That's not a corruption. That's incredible. Do you know how much that could help with mental health care? With conflict resolution? With understanding each other better?" Cass had spent a year thinking of her ability as a curse, the thing that made her people unwanted. Hearing Marcus call it incredible changed something inside her. "The Concordance fears it," she said. "The Concordance fears a lot of things," Marcus replied. "Mostly, they fear change. They've built a civilization on conformity. Anyone who's different threatens their entire system. But here's the thing they don't understand. Conformity makes you weak. When everyone thinks the same way, you can't adapt. You can't grow. You stagnate." He pulled up a hologram showing Earth's history. "Humans survived because we were diverse. When one group's solution didn't work, another group had a different idea. Our strength comes from having a million different perspectives, not just one." Cass felt his emotions. Conviction, hope, and something else, something warm directed at her. She looked away, confused by the feeling. Months passed. The refugee population grew to over 200,000 across Earth and its colonies on Mars and Europa. Humans shared everything, asking only that refugees contribute what they could. The exchanges were remarkable. Velar emotional sensing revolutionized human psychology. Synthburn hybrid technology advanced human medicine. Fractured collective processing solved engineering problems that stumped human computers. Wandering navigation techniques opened new space routes, but peace never lasts forever. One morning, alarms blared across the station. Cass ran to the command center, where Commander Chun stood with Captain Tharn and leaders from the other refugee species. "We've detected Concordance reconnaissance probes at the system's edge," Chun said, her face grim. "They know you're all here." Within hours, the message arrived. The Concordance demanded Earth surrender all refugees. They called Cass and her people genetic deviants, system threats, corruption that needed to be eliminated. They gave Earth 1 week to comply. "We refuse," said President Amara Okafor, speaking from Earth's capital. "These people are under our protection." The Concordance replied with an ultimatum. Surrender the refugees or face sanctions, blockade, and military action. Cass stood with Marcus in the observation deck, watching the stars and waiting for the Concordance fleet that would surely come. "You should give us up," she said. "You shouldn't go to war for us." Marcus took her hand. "That's not who we are. We don't abandon people. We don't let bullies decide who deserves to live." Cass felt his emotions, determination, courage, and that warm feeling again, stronger now. She realized what it was. He cared about her, not just as a refugee, as someone important. "What if we can't win?" she asked. "Then we go down fighting for what's right," Marcus said. "That's better than living on our knees." The week passed too quickly. The Concordance deadline arrived, and with it, 300 warships appeared at the edge of the Sol system. The war had begun. 6 months after the Concordance ultimatum, Cass stood in the engineering bay of the orbital station, working on retrofitting one of the old Vela colony ships. Marcus worked beside her, his hands moving with practiced ease as he installed new weapon systems. "This feels wrong," Cass said, attaching a plasma cannon to a ship that once carried families. "This vessel was built to save lives, not take them." "I know," Marcus replied. "But the Concordance gave us no choice." "They're coming, Cass. When they do, we need to be ready." The past 6 months had changed everything. The refugee population had grown to over 300,000 as more rejected species found Earth. The planet below had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Velar settlements dotted the coastlines. Synthburn communities integrated with human cities. The fractured established communes in quiet valleys, where they slowly learned to be individuals. The wandering used Earth as a base between their journeys, sharing stories from distant stars. But the Concordance threat hung over everything like a storm cloud. They hadn't attacked yet, but everyone knew it was coming. Earth and the refugees had spent every day since the ultimatum preparing for war. Kes had become a liaison between the Velar and human defense forces. Her emotion-sensing ability proved invaluable for coordination. She could feel the mood of entire crews, predict when stress would cause mistakes, know when someone needed rest before they collapsed. Human commanders called her their secret weapon. "How's the integration coming?" asked Commander Chun, entering the bay. She had become a friend to Kes over the months. "Better than expected," Marcus answered. "The Velar ships are old but solid. With our weapons and synthburn computing systems, they'll pack a real punch." Chun nodded. "The fracture just solved the shield harmonics problem. When we network all our ships together using their collective processing, we can create a unified defense grid. The Wandering found 3 hidden routes through the asteroid belt that we can use for ambush tactics. All this from the rejected ones," Kes said softly. "The beings the Concordance called worthless." "The Concordance's biggest mistake was thinking different meant lesser," Chun said. "They built their power on conformity, but conformity breeds weakness. Every species they rejected, they made us stronger." After the shift ended, Marcus invited Kes to visit Earth. They took a shuttle down to a place called Kenya, where Marcus had grown up. The African savanna stretched endlessly, golden grass moving like waves in the wind. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," Marcus said as they walked, "about when her grandmother was young, before the unification. Kenya was a place where refugees came from all over Earth, people fleeing war, famine, persecution. My family helped them even when they had so little to give. She said helping others wasn't about having enough. It was about being human." Kes felt the depth of his conviction. It wasn't just words. It was bone-deep belief. "I don't understand humans," she admitted. "The Concordance has power, technology, resources. You have nothing compared to them. But you refuse to bow." "Why?" Marcus smiled. "Because we learned something in our darkest hours. Survival isn't the most important thing. How you survive, what you're willing to do or sacrifice, who you're willing to become, that matters more. We could survive by giving you up, but we'd lose ourselves in the process." That evening, they sat under Earth's stars. Kes had studied stars her whole life, but she'd never just sat and enjoyed them. Marcus pointed out constellations, telling her the human stories behind them. "That's Orion," he said, "a hunter who became a constellation. And there's Cassiopeia, a queen who boasted too much and got punished for her pride." "Humans turn everything into stories," Kes observed. "Stories are how we understand the universe," Marcus said. "How we pass down lessons. How we remember who we are." He looked at her. "Someday, there will be stories about this. About the refugees who found sanctuary. About the species who stood together against an empire. If we survive," Kes said. "Even if we don't," Marcus replied. "The story still matters." Something had been growing between them for months. Kes felt it in every shared look, every accidental touch, every moment they found reasons to be near each other. She knew human customs about courtship were different from Velar ones, but the emotions were universal. "Marcus," she started, but he spoke at the same time. "Kes," they both laughed. Then Marcus took her hand. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," he said. "I don't know if we'll survive the war, but I know that meeting you changed me. You're brilliant, brave, and you care so deeply about others. I've fallen for you, Kes, and I needed to tell you before." She kissed him. It was clumsy at first. Different species, figuring out unfamiliar biology. But the emotion behind it was clear. She felt his joy, his surprise, his love. And she let him feel hers. Back on the station, their relationship became an open secret. Nobody minded. In fact, it seemed to give people hope. If a Velar and a human could find love across the void of space, maybe peace was possible. Other relationships formed. Synthburn and humans working side by side fell for each other. Fractured individuals found connection with others. The Wandering brought stories of romance from 1,000 worlds, but reality intruded soon enough. Concordance probe ships began testing Earth's defenses, quick strikes that retreated before defenders could respond. They were probing for weaknesses, mapping the system, preparing for something bigger. President Okafor addressed the planet and all the refugees in a historic speech. Cass watched from the engineering bay, surrounded by humans, Velar, Synthburn, Fractured, and Wandering, all working together. "They call us genetic deviants," the president said. "They call us abominations, corrupted, worthless. They say we don't deserve to exist. But I say we are the future. Not because we're perfect. We're not. We're flawed, different, messy, emotional, chaotic. But that's what makes us strong. That's what makes us human. And I don't just mean the humans of Earth. I mean all of us. Every being who believes that different doesn't mean wrong. That diversity is power. That every life has value." She paused, her voice rising. "The Concordance has given us another ultimatum. Surrender or be destroyed. Here is my answer. We will never surrender. We will stand together. And if they want to fight, we'll show them what the rejected ones can do when they fight for their home." The cheers echoed through every station, every colony, every ship. Cass felt the emotions of billions. Fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by determination, unity, and hope. That night, lying in Marcus's arms in his quarters, Cass whispered, "I never had a home after the plague. I thought I'd lost that forever. But I was wrong. Home isn't a place. It's the people who refuse to abandon you." Marcus held her closer. "Then this is home. For all of us." 3 days later, the Concordance sent their final message. No more negotiations. No more chances. Just a simple declaration of war. Cass suited up in her defense station uniform. Marcus checked his weapons one last time. Commander Chun gave orders to all units. The Synthburn linked their networks. The Fractured prepared their collective processing. The Wandering moved their ships into position in the asteroid belt. And at the edge of the Sol system, 300 Concordance warships appeared. The fleet was massive. Overwhelming, a force that had never been defeated. They broadcast their demands one final time. Surrender the refugees. Join the Concordance and be spared. President Okafor's response was 3 words. Come and try. The Concordance fleet began moving toward Earth. Their ships were advanced, powerful, crewed by species who had never known defeat. They expected quick victory, complete submission, total control. What they didn't expect was what waited for them in the darkness between stars. The rejected ones prepared to show the galaxy what they had learned from humanity. That compassion was not weakness. That diversity was not corruption. That sometimes the ones you throw away become the ones who change everything. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the Concordance was about to learn a hard lesson. Never underestimate the desperate. Never dismiss the different. And never, ever corner beings who have nothing left to lose except each other. The Concordance fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal predators. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a city. They didn't attack immediately. Instead, they broadcast their message across all frequencies, making sure the entire galaxy could hear. This is Luminarch Zothan, Supreme Commander of the Concordance Defense Fleet. The system known as Sol harbors genetic deviants, technological abominations, and enemies of civilized order. The beings called humans have refused all reasonable demands to surrender these corrupted individuals. Therefore, we will take them by force. Any resistance will be met with complete annihilation. Cass sat at her station on the orbital command center, monitoring emotional states across the defense fleet. She felt the fear rippling through thousands of beings. But beneath the fear lay something stronger: defiance. "All ships report ready," Commander Chen said from her command chair. "Velar fleet status?" "Weapons charged," Captain Thorm replied. "We're ready to fight." The Synthburn commander, a being called Unit 7, who was more machine than flesh, spoke next. "Network integration complete. We are linked with all defense systems. The Concordance will face a unified force. From deep in the asteroid belt, the wandering leader transmitted coordinates for ambush positions. The Fractured had distributed their collective consciousness across every ship, allowing instant communication and tactical processing that no individual mind could achieve. Earth's own fleet was smaller than the Concordance force, but humans had spent 6 months preparing. They had learned every trick, adapted every advantage, combined every piece of refugee technology and knowledge into something new. "They think we'll break easily," Marcus said from his position at Tactical. He looked at Cass and smiled. "They're about to learn otherwise." The Concordance fleet moved forward, maintaining perfect formation. It was beautiful and terrifying, a display of absolute military precision. They expected Earth to scatter, to panic, to beg for mercy one last time. Instead, President Okoffer's voice rang across all channels. "Concordance fleet, you have entered our home without permission. You threaten our people. You demand we betray those who asked us for help. We judge beings by their choices, not their genetics. By their courage, not their conformity. These people chose survival, hope, and peace. We choose to stand with them. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." The Luminarch's response was cold. "So be it." All ships opened fire. The battle began. Concordance ships launched missiles, thousands of them streaking toward Earth and its defenses. But the Fractured Collective had already predicted the trajectories. Defense systems, networked together, responded with perfect timing. Most missiles exploded harmlessly in space. The few that got through hit shields that were reinforced by synthborn power, regulation. Earth's fleet didn't fight like the Concordance expected. Humans had studied warfare for their entire history. They knew that smaller forces could defeat larger ones through cunning unpredictability and willingness to take risks. The wandering ships emerged from the asteroid belt behind the Concordance fleet, hitting their rear guard with devastating surprise attacks. When the Concordance ships turned to face this threat, human fighters attacked from a different angle, using guerrilla tactics that no military academy taught. The Velar ships, with Kess coordinating them, didn't just fight. They used their emotional sensing to predict enemy actions. When a Concordance captain was about to order a dangerous maneuver, Kess felt his determination and warned her allies. When enemy crews began to panic, she directed fire at those ships, exploiting their weakness. "They're adapting faster than our models predicted," Unit 7 reported. "The Concordance fleet is trying to regroup." "Then we don't let them," Chun ordered. "All ships break formation. Engage at will. Make them chase us through the asteroid field." The organized battle became chaos. Individual ships dueled among the asteroids. Human pilots flew with reckless bravery, using the rocks as cover and weapons, luring Concordance ships into collisions. The Synthburn used their hybrid nature to interface directly with ship systems, reacting faster than any organic pilot. But the Concordance had numbers and firepower. For every enemy ship destroyed, Earth lost ships too. Cass watched the casualty reports climb. Human crews, Vela fighters, synthborn cruisers. The fractured lost dozens of their fragments, each death a piece of their broken consciousness gone forever. Incoming! Someone shouted. A Concordance missile had slipped through the defenses. It was heading straight for the orbital refugee center. Cass watched in horror as the missile struck. The explosion tore through 3 sections of the station. Alarms blared. Life support failed in multiple areas. Thousands of refugees, humans, Velar, synthborn, all the beings they were trying to protect, died in seconds. She felt every death. Their fear, their pain, their final moments. It crashed over her like a wave, threatening to drown her. Marcus ran to her station, holding her as she shook. "I felt them die," she whispered. "All of them. They came here for safety, and we couldn't protect them. This is why we fight," Marcus said, his voice hard with anger. "So this doesn't happen again. Come on, we're needed elsewhere." A Concordance strike team had infiltrated one of the human ships using a boarding pod. They were heading toward the reactor core, planning to detonate the ship from inside. Marcus led a security team to stop them, and Cass went with him, using her abilities to track the enemy through the ship's corridors. "They're close," she said, feeling bursts of alien emotion. 3 ahead, 2 to the left. The firefight was brutal and close. Marcus took a hit, a plasma bolt that burned through his armor and into his chest. He collapsed, blood spreading across the deck. "No!" Cass dragged him behind cover while the rest of the security team finished off the strike force. She pressed her hands against his wound, feeling his pain, his fear, his love for her still burning bright despite everything. "I'm okay," Marcus gasped, though clearly he wasn't. "We stopped them. The ship is safe." Medical teams arrived, rushing Marcus to the emergency bay. Cass stayed with him as human doctors worked frantically to save his life. The wound was bad. He might not survive. As they operated, Marcus grabbed Cass's hand. "Listen to me. If I don't make it—" "Don't say that," Cass interrupted, tears running down her face. "If I don't make it," Marcus continued, "you have to keep fighting. Not for revenge. For something better. That's what makes this meaningful. Fighting so others can have the home we built together." The doctors managed to stabilize him, but he'd need weeks of recovery. Cass kissed his forehead and returned to her station. The battle still raged. On Earth's surface, Concordance troops had landed, trying to capture the refugee settlements and use them as hostages. But they found resistance everywhere. Human civilians fought alongside Vela refugees. Synthborn used their technological abilities to sabotage enemy equipment. Even Mira, the young Vela child, helped by guiding evacuation efforts with her emerging motion sensing. The battle had been raging for 12 hours. Both sides were exhausted. Earth's defenses were failing. The Concordance had superior numbers, and eventually, numbers always won. Commander Chen looked at the tactical display with grim determination. "We can't hold much longer. They're going to break through to Earth itself." Just as Cass felt despair settling over the command crew, something impossible happened. 30 ships from the Concordance fleet suddenly stopped firing. They broke formation, turning 90 degrees away from their wing. "What are they doing?" Chen asked, confused. The 30 ships opened fire, but not at Earth, at their own fleet. Concordance vessels exploded under fire from their own allies. Chaos erupted in the enemy formation as they tried to understand what was happening. "This is Commander Rith of the Concordance ship Morning Light," a voice transmitted. "We can no longer follow orders that violate everything we once believed. Our species were refugees once, thousands of years ago. We were different once, before the Concordance made us all the same. We remember. And we will not be part of genocide today. More ships joined the rebellion. Then more. The Concordance fleet fractured as nearly a quarter of their forces turned against them. All rebel ships, Chun broadcast, you are welcome to join our defense. Together we stand. The battle shifted. With the Concordance fleet divided and fighting itself, Earth's forces pressed their advantage. The Luminards tried to restore order, but the fracture had begun. Seeds of doubt, planted in species who were forced to conform, finally sprouted. The Concordance fleet began to retreat. They had come to deliver a quick, decisive victory. Instead, they found a united force of rejected ones who refused to die quietly. They found their own people questioning orders. They found that diversity, the thing they feared most, was exactly what defeated them. As the Concordance ships jumped to hyperspace, limping away with heavy losses, Earth erupted in celebration. But Kes felt no joy. She walked through the damaged station, past bodies being recovered, past injured refugees crying out in pain. They had survived, but the cost was terrible, and the Concordance would return. In the medical bay, Marcus squeezed her hand. We won. For now, Kes said. But they'll come back. They'll bring more ships, more weapons. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But they'll also have to face something they've never encountered before. Doubt. We cracked their unity. We showed their people that another way is possible. That's worth more than any military victory. Kes looked out the window at Earth, still blue and beautiful despite the battle scars in orbit. What do we do now? She asked. Marcus smiled weakly. We rebuild. We heal. We prepare. And we show the galaxy that the rejected ones aren't going anywhere. 5 years after the battle for Earth, Kes stood at the entrance to the Coalition Assembly Hall. The building was beautiful, designed by architects from 12 different species. Each section reflected a different culture, but they all fit together into something greater than the sum of their parts. Marcus walked beside her, his hand in hers. He had recovered from his wounds, though he still carried scars. They both did. Everyone who survived that battle carried scars, visible and invisible. Ready? Marcus asked. I don't know, Kes admitted. Speaking to representatives from 200 worlds is different from coordinating ship crews. You'll be amazing, Marcus said. Just like always. They walked inside. The assembly hall buzzed with activity. Beings from across the galaxy filled the chamber. Not just the original refugees anymore. Dozens of species had left the Concordance to join what was now called the Free Coalition. Some came because they disagreed with Concordance policies. Others came seeking the freedom to be different. All came seeking what Earth offered, a place where diversity was celebrated, not feared. Commander Chun, now Admiral Chun, waved them over. She looked older, more tired, but her eyes still held that spark of determination. The Concordance delegation just arrived, she said quietly. They're asking to address the assembly. They're here? Kes asked, surprised. I thought they declared us enemies forever. Things change, Chen replied. The defections from the battle didn't stop. Over the past 5 years, 93 worlds have left the Concordance. Their empire is fracturing. Some of their leadership realized they need to adapt or die. The assembly session began. President Okafor, now older but still sharp, called the meeting to order. Representatives from every coalition species filled the chamber. Velar, Synthburn, Fractured, Wandering, and hundreds of others. Humans sat among them as equals, not leaders. That was the coalition's first principle. No species above another. We have a special delegation today, Okafor announced. Representatives from the Concordance have asked permission to speak. I've granted it because we believe in hearing all voices. 3 Concordance representatives entered. They moved carefully, clearly uncomfortable. The assembly watched them with mixed emotions. These were beings from the same government that tried to exterminate them 5 years ago. The lead representative, a tall being with crystalline skin, stepped forward. I am Councillor Varan of the Concordance. I come not with demands, but with an apology and a request to learn. Silence filled the chamber. An apology was the last thing anyone expected. 5 years ago, we came to destroy you, Varan continued. We believed conformity created strength. We believed difference was corruption. We believed we were protecting galactic civilization by eliminating those who didn't fit our vision. We were wrong. He paused, looking around at all the different species. When our ships defected during the battle, we called them traitors. We punished their families. We tried to suppress the truth about what happened here. But truth spreads. Stories spread. Your coalition grew while our empire shrank. We lost 93 worlds. Billions of beings chose your way over ours. And we finally asked ourselves why. The answer was simple, Varan said. You offered them something we never could. Freedom to be themselves. Acceptance of their differences. A voice in their own future. You proved that diversity creates strength, not weakness. We built our civilization on fear, and fear makes empires brittle. They break when tested. Another Concordance representative spoke, a female with feathers and bright eyes. Many of us studied your history. Humanity's history particularly fascinated us. You nearly destroyed yourselves. You had every reason to become rigid, controlling, conformist. Instead, you did the opposite. You embraced chaos, diversity, freedom, and you thrived. This contradiction confused us until we realized it wasn't a contradiction at all. It was the answer. What are you asking for? President Okafor inquired. Permission to observe, Varan said. To learn. To begin reforming the Concordance based on what works here. We're not asking to join the coalition. We've done too much harm for that. But we're asking for a chance to change, to become better. And perhaps, generations from now, our peoples can coexist in peace. The assembly debated for hours. Some representatives wanted to reject the Concordance entirely. The wounds were too fresh, the memories too painful. Others argued that refusing to help would make the coalition no better than the Concordance once was. Finally, Kes stood to speak. As Earth's co-representative, her voice carried weight. 5 years ago, I was a refugee, she said. My people were dying in space, rejected by every port, every station, every world. We had given up hope. Then we heard a message. All are welcome. Sanctuary granted. Follow the beacon home. She looked at the Concordance delegation. Humans could have rejected us. They had no reason to help. We brought them nothing but trouble. The Concordance threatened war because of us. But humans helped anyway. Not because it was smart or strategic or safe. Because it was right. If we become what the Concordance was, Kes continued, if we reject them simply because they're different or because we fear them, then we've lost what makes the coalition special. We don't have to forget what they did. We should never forget. But we can choose to be better. We can choose to offer the same chance we were given. The vote was close. But in the end, the coalition agreed to accept Concordance observers. They would watch, learn, and begin the long process of reform. After the session, Kes and Marcus walked through the coalition gardens. These gardens contained plants from every member world, creating an ecosystem that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Like the coalition itself? Do you think they'll really change? Marcus asked. I don't know, Kes said honestly. But we have to give them the chance. Besides, we're not the same people we were 5 years ago either. The battle changed everyone. She thought about the past 5 years. The rebuilding had been long and hard. They'd lost 17,000 beings in the battle, including many humans who died protecting refugees. But something incredible had risen from those ashes. The Velar had become the Coalition's diplomats, using their emotional sensing to prevent conflicts before they started. The Synthburn advanced medical technology saved millions of lives across 100 worlds. The Fractured, now accepting their individuality, brought unique perspectives to collective problems. The Wandering explored the galaxy, finding new worlds and new species to invite home. And humans? They remained the heart of it all. Not because they were superior or special, but because they remembered their own dark history and refused to repeat it. They remembered what it felt like to be divided, to be cruel, to nearly destroy themselves. And they chose differently. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked. The future, Kes said. We've built something amazing here, but it's fragile. There are still threats out there. Species that fear what we've created. The Concordance might reform, but there are others who won't. Then we keep building, Marcus said. We keep showing the galaxy that another way is possible. We keep being that beacon. Mara, now a teenager, ran up to them. She had become a junior ambassador, using her emotion sensing to help different species understand each other. Kes, Marcus, there's a new refugee fleet. They just picked up our beacon. 20,000 beings from the Corthan species. The Concordance rejected them for refusing genetic modifications. Then we welcomed them, Kes said, smiling. Just like we were welcomed. That evening, Kes and Marcus stood at the observation deck, watching the new refugee ships approach Earth. The planet still glowed blue and green, still beautiful, still welcoming. Do you ever miss your old life? Marcus asked. Before the plague, before the rejection, before all this. Kes thought about it. She had been a scientist then, comfortable and secure in a rigid society. She had never questioned the Concordance's rules. She had lived a small, safe life. No, she said finally. I miss the people we lost. I miss not knowing what pain and fear feel like. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. I found my purpose here. I found my family. I found you. Marcus pulled her close. The Assembly wants us to draft the official Coalition Charter tomorrow. They want it to be something that lasts for generations. What should we include? Kes asked. The truth, Marcus said. That every being deserves a place to belong. That difference makes us stronger. That compassion isn't weakness. It's the highest form of courage. That we judge beings by their choices and their character, not by their genetics or their past. That conformity is death, but diversity is life. Below them, the new refugee ships began docking procedures. Humans, Velar, Synthburn, Fractured, and Wandering worked together to welcome them. Medical teams stood ready. Translators prepared. Housing waited. Food was set aside. Everything these new refugees needed offered freely, just as it had been offered to Kes 5 years ago. All are welcome, Kes whispered, remembering that first message that saved her life. Sanctuary granted, Marcus added. Together, they finished the phrase that had become the Coalition's motto. Follow the beacon home. 50 years later, historians would study this moment. They would analyze how a single species, humanity, changed the course of galactic civilization. They would debate whether it was ideology or strategy, compassion or calculation. They would write volumes about the Coalition's formation and the Concordance's decline. But they would miss the simple truth. It wasn't about politics or power. It was about a choice. The choice to see value in every being. The choice to offer help without demanding payment. The choice to stand with the rejected instead of becoming the rejectors. Earth had been dismissed as too chaotic, too emotional, too different. The galaxy's rejects had been called corrupted, worthless, dangerous. Together, they proved that the things that made them different were exactly what made them strong. The beacon still broadcasts across the galaxy. All are welcome. Sanctuary granted. Follow the beacon home. And they came. By the hundreds, by the thousands, by the millions. Different species, different cultures, different ways of thinking. They came to a blue planet orbiting a yellow star. They came to a place where being different wasn't a crime. They came to Earth, and Earth welcomed them all. Because that's what humanity learned in their darkest hours, in their wars and their failures and their mere extinction. That the only way to truly survive is together. That the only future worth building is one where everyone belongs. That home isn't a place or a planet or a genetic code. Home is where someone says, "You belong here," and means it. Cass stood in the Coalition Assembly Hall, now elderly, her life nearly complete. She had lived to see the Coalition grow to over 400 worlds. She had lived to see the Concordance reformed, its rigid structure replaced by something more flexible and kind. She had lived to see her children and grandchildren, human and Vela mixed, become leaders of this new galaxy. She had lived to see the rejected ones become the foundation of galactic civilization. And as she looked out at the assembly, at hundreds of species working together, arguing and laughing and learning from each other, she felt something she hadn't felt in decades. She felt the same emotion she experienced when she first heard that beacon call. Hope, pure, unbreakable, infinite hope. The galaxy had been sick with conformity, dying from sameness, suffocating under rigid rules. Humanity and the rejected ones had given it a cure. Not a perfect cure. They still had conflicts, still had problems, still made mistakes. But they faced them together. All of them. Different but united. Diverse but strong. Rejected no more. And Earth, the blue planet that the galaxy once dismissed, became the place every being looked to when they needed to remember what really mattered. That every life has value. That every being deserves dignity. That the greatest strength comes not from being the same, but from celebrating what makes each of us unique. Humanity became their safe haven. And in doing so, humanity taught the galaxy how to save itself.